Hello, gals and girls. So, work on part 2 today. I think where I left off was about moving in with my dad when I was 10. So, I moved in with my dad when I was 10, thinking I was going to be, you know, more manly, I guess. I could do more things. Got my dad with me and, that kind of thing. And I ended up having to do the same stuff. The only thing I didn't have to do was chop wood and carry coal into the house. My dad had electric heat then. So didn't have to do that, but I did have to mow the yard, did have to still weed, that kind of thing. But on the flip side, I had a half brother that lived there, so it was more than just you know me as a young kid there. And now, granted, my brother at the time was 5 years old, so he couldn't do much, but you know, it still gave me a someone else to play with and have fun with and do things with. And even though he was a bigger mama boy than me, he had to have mama on his side every 2 minutes and everything. I apologize for any noise you might hear. I'm out in my vehicle today videoing. It's just a pretty day. I thought I'd sit out here and video, but yeah. So I moved in with my dad, went to my mom's every other weekend. So basically the roles reversed, holidays or summer I'd spend, a week with her and stuff. Still went out on the truck with my dad in the summertime. Still enjoyed it, Like I said, it was a love-hate relationship. My dad wasn't much of a disciplined type person. I mean, he would, he'd ground me and that kind of thing, and he never really, I don't even remember one time that my dad really, whooped me or anything, I remember him smacking me across the face a few times to make me listen. When I mean smack, I mean like just a little quick pop. It was just enough strength out of that pop that would straighten me up. That's that's how kids were raised back in the day. You listen to your parents, or you got in trouble. And so anyway, mom still done a lot of discipline. I mean, if I went home with her, she was still bust my hind end if I needed it or whatever, and everything. Nothing changed just because I was gone. She didn't like me being gone, but just because I was gone didn't mean I got special treatment when I come to see her. Christmas and the holidays and stuff was kind of hard. When I got with my dad's side of the family at the time, I had waking up Christmas there, and then going to my grandmother's, and then that was it. Now with my mom's side, I had going to waking up there, uh, going to my grandma's house, and we went to church. They usually have like a little church service or something. Well, I'll say usually. Sometimes they had church services, but not all the time. So things are a little different. When you're a kid, you only had two places to go, basically. Some places went to their aunts and or their uncle's place and stuff like that. But for my family, it was just, my mom, my grandmother, and then my dad, my grandmother and grandfather on that side. And my sister that I have, she wasn't my dad's daughter. Uh, she was, by a different man that my mom, thought they were going to make it or whatever, and then things happened. It still happened back then. People still had kids out of wedlock. And the story that has been told from both sides, my mom and my dad at the time, was that my dad met my mom, he fell in love with my sister, and then he fell in love with my mom, and then they got married. I come along, and then they separated, they divorced. He was gone a lot, driving a truck, and so they just couldn't make things work. And so when I moved in with my dad, of course, my sister stayed there because that's her mom. Dad wasn't, her dad. And so anyway, I lived with Dad until I was 18, 17, somewhere around there. I didn't finish high school. Got out of high school, went straight to work. So I was about 17 when I quit high school, because I was already held back a year because my evil stepmother held me back a year, and that's still a sore spot on me. But we got there when I was in, I think the third or fourth grade. I can't remember which grade it was. I had to go through different classes. I had to go through, special reading classes and stuff like that because I couldn't read that well. Didn't comprehend that well. I still don't some things, reading, as far as reading, I have to read things, sometimes 2 and 3 or 4 times just to comprehend what I'm reading a lot of times. That's the way I was in school as well. Math wasn't usually that big of a problem with me. I did pretty decent in math. History, social studies, and science, that kind of thing. I did okay in that stuff. It was just that reading and English, spelling, that type of stuff what gave me problems, and I don't know why. But anyway, but when I was in Grandview in Hickory, that was in North Carolina at that time. That's where I grew up, was North Carolina. Lived there all my life until I got married and moved out of state, but we went to they was going to have, the Challenger was going up. I don't know how many of you remember the Challenger, but it was going up, and it was a real big deal. I don't know about all schools, but for our school it was a real big deal because it was a teacher going up. So every classroom had a TV in it, and so when we went to lunch during my English class, went and got our lunch tray and brought it back to the classroom. We all sat right there and was watching TV, and we was eating, and then it went up, and then, as you know, it exploded. Killed everyone on board. And that was a bittersweet day there. It was probably the very first moment in my life that I, saw something like that happen, in real time. You see stuff on movies and, news if you're watching the news or whatever, but at that time, it's the first time you actually see something like that, and it's embedded in your mind, and it was a rough time for the rest of that week and several weeks on. It took a while for school to start get back to normal, and so it was a rough time during that time, and but I went on through there. I went to high school, got in a lot of trouble. I got more trouble in high school than I did, in middle school. But I never backed down from anybody. I never took nothing off anybody. I even helped people that was being bullied by other people because I couldn't stand a bully. And I fought at least 2 guys over them picking on a guy. This little scrawny guy. He was probably, I don't know, he might have weighed 80 pounds and was about 4 foot something. He was a short little guy. And I was almost at my peak. I was 5 something, 5'2", 5'4", somewhere around there, 5'6", and I weighed about 275, something around. I was a big boy. Like I said, I was always a big boy, and I, took them on. I just, like I said, I just didn't like bullies. So that being said, I got kicked out of school several times. They wanted me to come into summer school, so I went to summer school and got my grades back up. I was still about a half of a semester behind. So when it come time, start worrying about the graduation and stuff, I was a senior, but I was also a junior. I was taking junior English and senior English and everything else in senior. Most of the classes I didn't have to take because I had enough credits in it, but most thing was English, history, and I wanted to say, I think it was math. but I can't remember exactly because at that time I was trying to do college prep math and all that crap. But anyway, then when I got out of school, they told me that I had to come back to do a summer school again, and I had to bring my points up for English because I had, I think I finished like a 75 and I needed like a 90, I believe it was, to get out of that. And that was, like I said, that was still junior English. And I was just upset and ticked off, and I was like, nope, I'm not going back. I'm not going back to school. I'm done with it. My dad tried to talk me into going back. I wouldn't do it. I told him, no, I'm done. I just want to work, get my life, start working on my life, basically. So that's what I did. I went to work, got away from the grocery store, started working at a furniture factory. And my dad got into it. I moved out because, I wanted to live my life, and he wanted me to do things for him. And, being 17, 18 years old, you want to do your own things. You don't want to sit there. And this time I'm on my second stepmom because he got married a third time. And so I was on my second stepmom, and her and I didn't get along real well either. And so he said, well, then pack your bags and leave. So I packed my bags and went and lived with my uncle for a little while, and me and him got into it over some stupid little argument. So he kicked me out. So I was out of my own. And I was, I think I moved back in my dad's again for a little while. I met my first wife. Her and I got along real well. I mean, things went really good with us. I moved in before we got married, even though her parents didn't like that part. I moved in before we got married. Got us a house. 17 years we was married together, and then it all went to shit, pretty much. Can't tell you really the story behind it. It's just, well, the reason behind it. I can tell you plenty of stories, but the reason behind it, I don't really know. I mean, I got to the point to where I guess I was falling out of love with her. She didn't have the same interests as I had, and it was kind of conflicting with each other. And plus, I got accused several times of having other women in my vehicle going down the road because her mom, her dad, or her brother, or somebody saw somebody in my vehicle. And a few times it was my cousin, And so I got to the point where I was tired of being accused of cheating, I guess you could say, or messing around, or whatever you want to say. So we split up, and that was a pretty, I won't say a bad split up, but it wasn't a good split up. She thought I was going to fight her for everything, and she begged me to come back home a couple of times, and no, I'm done with it. If you're going to accuse me of something, I'm not doing it. Tried to tell me I wasn't going to have a key to my own house and all this crap, and I was like, I'm an adult. No, I'm not doing that. I was in my 30s by then. No, I'm not doing that. And so my dad passed away, and I think that might have had a little bit to do with it too, as well. I had that on my mind with him passing away. It was 2010 when he passed away, and I think that's what drew me from that. But as far as parenting, I said a lot of that to get to this, I guess. I don't know, but when my ex-wife and I was married, I'm going to say it's somewhere around 2003, 2004, something like that. They started bringing these notes from school that my two stepkids did about we can't spank them no more because the government said so. And I'm like, what do you mean the government said so? Well, if you whoop me a certain way or whatever, we can turn you into the school, and they'll have social services come out here and blah, 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 all this crap. And I'm like, or are the government going to pay you? Are they going to give us money for your food, give us money for your clothes, and give us money for your doctor bill and that kind of thing? Are they going to take care of you? If I can't whoop you, or your mama can't whoop you, then How you gonna get disciplined? You know, and that point right there is where it started. I firmly believe it. That's where it started at. The government didn't want you keep whooping your kids, so you couldn't do them. All you could do was tell them to go to their room or take a toy away or do this or do that. You know, you couldn't physically punish your child. And from that point on, I started seeing a lot of difference and a lot of changes in people. Young adults didn't want to work because mom and daddy gave them everything. You know, and it was time for them to get out and start working. They work a day or two. Excuse me. They work a day or two and not work no more. And then as I got older, I started noticing even more. I started traveling for work, and these young men and young women, young men coming to work. And I say young, I mean like in their 20s to 30, 30ish, I would say. Not want to do nothing. All they was there for was a paycheck. Well, look, you do your job or you go home. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do your work, my work, and try to help somebody else do their job when you're not doing yours. And then, you look at the prison system, look at the jailhouses. They're full of young kids, even as young as 9, 10 years old who shot somebody. And they're sitting in juvie because they shot somebody, because they wasn't taught you don't do that kind of stuff. And now you've got, people in and out of jail because mom and dad always, oh, it's okay, because you can't do nothing. You whoop your child, they go to school and tell the teacher, well, my daddy whooped me or my mommy whooped me. Well, then that gets social services called out. Well, why'd you whip your child? Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Well, it's my child. If I want to whoop my child, I whoop my child, That's the way I look at it. But they don't, it's the state and the government don't look at it that way. And it's the wrong way to look. Your child needs discipline. Your child needs to learn right from wrong. And they need to know if you do wrong, you get punished for it. If you do right, you get praised for it. That's like handing out ribbons to everybody at field day, whether they won or not. It's a participation ribbon. They don't teach kids that. They teach kids saying that all I gotta do is just walk and I'll get a ribbon. Yay, I got a ribbon. They don't teach them nothing. Back in my day, you got first, second, and third. That was it. And a lot of times I think you only get first. But I was a kid then. I liked that third trophy or third place ribbon when I got. But that's the thing. It makes you feel good. But feeling good don't help you in the real world. That's the problem now. The Democrats, more than any of them, are worried so much about someone's feelings than they are worried about the actual facts, what goes on. And if the government would stay out of people's lives and the parents would learn how to punish their kids, I think this world would be a whole lot better place. I know this country would be a better place. You got kids raising kids, and you got grandparents raising kids that ain't theirs because the kid that had a kid is off running around probably making another kid. And it's all in their mindset. And the men make the girls act like, or make them think, get in their head that they can't find nobody else. Nobody else will treat them like they treat them. And it's the same thing with, with women being in situations where, men hit on them and stuff. They don't deserve that. And it's hard to explain to a woman that way because a man's got so much control, so much handle on them that they feel like they can't leave. Like nobody else is going to love them. Nobody else is going to treat them good when the guy don't treat them good to begin with. They'll hit them. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I was upset because so-and-so made me mad. I apologize. I'm sorry. And then 2 hours later, hit them again. I don't understand why. Honestly, I don't understand why women want to hang around to that. I get the point of why. I just don't understand why. Because things ain't never going to get good. And if you have a kid with the person that does that, eventually he's going to start doing it to the kids. And if it's a boy, he's going to learn that pattern. And when he gets a girlfriend, that's what he's going to start doing. It's just going to start the pattern and keep the pattern going. That's the same way with punishment. If you don't punish a child for doing wrong, he or she never knows they're doing wrong until it smacks them in the face when they get older and they finally have to pay the repercussions for what they're doing. And it all boils down to not taking care of the kid, not punishing the kid for what they did wrong when they did it wrong. And we need to stop that. It needs to be stopped. It don't matter what age you are or whatever. It's, you need to make your kid listen. And these schools complain about kids not listen either, and the kids don't do nothing either. Now the teachers aren't there to raise your kid. You should raise your own kid. That's your job. God gave you that child to protect and to discipline. And if you don't do the discipline, and all you do is let them get by, they're never going to learn the discipline. Because then when they have kids, they're going to do the same thing. That's like having a PlayStation and the kid's getting on your nerves and instead of telling the kid, get outside and play, go get on your PlayStation. Leave me alone, go play on PlayStation. You're using the PlayStation or the Xbox or the Nintendo Switch or what all these toys are. I don't know all these new games they got out nowadays, but you're using something, the cell phone, using something as a babysitter instead of you taking care of your own kids. And then what do? They learn stuff off of YouTube, off of TikTok, and all this crap, and they just get more trouble. These little challenges. You go up and hit somebody. It happened a few years ago. People walking down the street, and I've seen a bunch of it in New York where they walk down the street and somebody just holds off and punches them and then runs. That door knock deal. A couple of people got shot at. Some got killed for knocking on a person's door at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning when they're in bed. Stuff like that needs to be taught to the kids. You don't do that. You don't go and knock on someone's door unless you really need their help, and you definitely don't run after you knock on the door. So parenting is the biggest problem we have in this country. There's not enough of it that needs to be done. If these kids nowadays, the Gen Zs and the millennials and I don't know what they're called now, but if they were raised the way I was raised, or the way my mom was raised, it'd be a whole lot better place. You'd be thinking twice, well, should I take this, or should I take that, or should I rob this guy, or should I steal that car, or should I do this, or should I do that? And that's just, that's one of the biggest issues we have in America today, is that nobody's punishing their child. And when they do get in trouble, you got these other states, these Democratic states that has these Democratic judges and Democrat DAs, and they call these 18-year-olds, they call them kids. They're not kids, they're an adult. And in my opinion, if you're 15 or 14 years old and you're adult enough to shoot somebody, then you're adult enough to go to jail, go to prison. If you have to go to juvie for a couple years until you turn 18 or whatever the age is, some states you can go in prison at the big house at 16. If you have to wait till that time, then send them to the big house. I'm not saying they need a death penalty, but they need to be in the rest of their life. They need to spend 25 to 35 years in jail, prison, for what they done. What about rehabilitation? Some kids can be rehabilitated, I agree, and I know. But a lot of them can't. And you can't let them all out, because not all of them can be rehabilitated. You got people that's been in prison for a long time. Charles Manson was in prison pretty much from a young adult of 20, I think, to the time he died. And that was a long time. That was back in the 60s. He never killed nobody, you know. But we need to start having harder punishment on these adults, young adults, these children that are doing this right now. Because you still have people at 17 and 18, even 19, that gets caught stealing a car or whatever it may be, and they walk them in the front door and right out the back door. Or the front door's got a revolving door and just rolls back out and they go on the street again and do the exact same thing a day later, or maybe even that night. You got these illegals that are here. Yes, I'm against illegals. If you come here the right way, you come through the border the right way, you get signed up, you get your working pass or whatever it is, your green card, all that, you get all that, the right documentation done, and then you come in, you go to work, and you have a certain court date to get back. If you know what your court date is, if you may not be able to make it, you need to go before the day of your court date and say, look, I'm not going to be able to make it. Can I get an extension on my court date? Especially if the courts are backed up. 90% of the time, they're going to give you an extension. If you do everything the right way, I want you here. I'd love for you to be here if you're doing things the right way. But when you come across the border illegally, then you go hide in these sanctuary cities and you kill somebody, or you hurt somebody, or you steal from somebody, or whatever the situation may be, you get caught, you need to be out. Back to police. Yes, we have some bad cops out on the streets, and I will agree to that 100%. But we got some good ones. And the problem is we see more of the bad cops than we do the good cops. Because nobody focuses on good things. Nobody. They only focus on the bad. And the ICE agents are out there doing a job. It's a tough job. It's I would say it's probably worse than being a cop with the ICE agents. But they're doing their job. They're doing what they're told to do. Getting down on them is not what you got to do. If you want to change things, you got to change their policy. And the only way to change their policy is get in with the government, get in with the DHS, get in with the Homeland Security, get all that stuff and try to work on a way to fix the situation instead of defunding them or discriminating against them or whatever it may be. Them guys are just like the rest of us. They're out doing a job to try to pay their bills, put food on the table with the family. That's all they're doing. It's not like they're out there and purposely looking for someone that's got a darker skin color and doing. Did they make mistakes? Yes. But all the mistakes they make, the mainstream media, like MSNBC or MS Now, whatever it's called, CBS, ABC, all of them hype it all up. Oh, they drove him around for 5 hours and then they finally took him home. 90% of that story that they tell on Ice Age is all false. And it usually comes out in the end. It usually comes out, well, they took him to the station, realized it wasn't him, they brought him back. Just like one guy they talked about, I'm wanting to say it was in Minnesota, took him out of his house in his shorts, no shirt on, no shoes on, and drove him around for an hour before they brought him back home. I guarantee you they probably didn't drive him around for an hour. They probably went to their station, found out who he was, and took him back. Because the point being is, what they didn't tell you is that the ICE agent asked him right there at the door, what is your name? Are you so-and-so? He said, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to give you my name. So what they do, since he looked like the person, they took him. You know how many times a cop goes and arrests somebody, even a female, put them in handcuffs and all she's got on is a bra and a pair of panties? I mean, it happens all the time. Usually they have to throw a robe around them or something and take them to jail, because when they get to jail, they get their own clothes. So you can't believe everything the mainstream media tells you. You got to do your own research. Stop listening to all these channels that puts Trump down. Is Trump perfect? No, he's not perfect. He's beyond perfect. Ain't nobody in this world perfect. But if you look back at what Trump has really done over the years of him being the president, the first time he's president and now this time he's president, if you look back at what he's done a lot more for this country than any other Democrat has in years. And if you will look into what he's done, you will see that he's not the mean, bad guy that everybody puts him out to be. He's actually a pretty good guy. He'll sit down and meet with just about anybody. And Democrats don't want to be seen doing it. They don't want to be seen going to his office and talking to him about things, because it makes them look like, well, my buddies ain't gonna like me now because I went and talked to the president. Who cares? Stop having that feeling. Just go work things out, you know. But I'm gonna leave it at that. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. If you have any comments, put them down in the comment section, and I'll do my best to get back with you. Like I said, if I don't say anything to you on the comments section, I'll address it on the next video. But I appreciate your time. Thanks for being with me, and help me grow this channel. It's not always just going to be about me or anything. It might be about some interests that I have. I like going fishing, and it's getting warmer weather now, and I like to go ride and just ride around sometimes, just to clear my head. But I hope you do join my channel and help me grow. I think my next video might be on disability deal, because I'm disabled. Excuse me. I got a head cold or allergies or something. I don't know what it is, but anyway, thanks for watching, and I appreciate you. And just remember, God loves you, and He will not forsake you if you just ask Him to forgive you. Ask Him to come into your heart, and He'll be there for you. Prayer works. Sometimes we feel like it don't. I know I'm the first one to say I feel like sometimes He's not answering my prayers, but I believe He is, and I know He is, because it usually gets answered 2, 3, maybe even a month later. 2 or 3 weeks to a month later, I get my answer. We got to remember, and it's hard for us to remember, that God works on His time, not our time. But again, thank you for watching. I appreciate every one of you, and I hope you have a good evening and a good weekend. Until then, peace out.